It's not so often that one company gets things so right, and it's even more rare for them to do so on their first attempt at a product, and even less likely that they'll do so across multiple new products in areas of the market that they've never touched before. Meet QSC. As an amplifier company, they impressed most everyone with their Powerlight series of amplifiers in the 1990s. Leveraging that success, they quietly turned their attention to developing network digital audio systems, pushing protocols like MediaLink and CobraNet into the future, and ultimately developing what is now their powerful and flexible QSYS networked audio system. Not stopping there, though, they decided to take on the powered speaker market, which was saturated to say the least at the time. On their very first attempts at producing a powered speaker, they delivered the K and KW series, which quickly became the industry-leading products they are today. With all of this in mind, it was still surprising to find out that QSC was working on a mixing console. This surely is a segment of the market where loyalties run deep, and convincing users to shell out good money for a mixer with no direct lineage had to have been daunting. Somehow, though, once again, QSC has knocked it out of the park. Perhaps it was their deep history in network digital audio research, or the clever decision to bring Greg Mackey and Peter Watts onto the design team, but this is one freaking impressive first attempt at a product. Let's take a look at the TouchMix 8. So this is our main mixer, channels 1 through 8, they're inputs. On the main screen, you get access to each individual channel. You get a Q button that you can use to solo something into your headphones. The headphone output on this console is back here on the back. You've got your channel fader, obviously, and you can hear that changing, going up and down. Very nice and responsive, and you can do, unfortunately, only one adjustment at a time. You can't grab multiple faders. You get a mute channel. That was the mute switch. And then here's your inputs 9, 10, 11, 12. Those come in right over here. And a really handy thing to keep with your mixer is a simple 3.5 millimeter to 3.5 millimeter with a 1/4 inch headphone adapter on the end. If you keep one of these in your kit, it's a really great way to hook up things like an iPod or a laptop locally. So if you have a laptop for playback and you want to do local playback, you're off and running with that. You've got 2-track playback here, which you can play back tracks off of a USB stick if they're formatted correctly. And then this is the 2-track record, which feeds the left-right mix to that USB record as well. That's how you assign just to record the left-right. Next page over, you've got your effects masters. Those are the returns. Same features on the channel strip. You have your 4 aux outputs on this console, and then you've got your DCA groups here. DCAs can be really helpful on a small mixer like this for grouping things logically and being able to control multiple inputs with a single fader. It's really handy. A really nice feature about this console that I like is that there is a hardware control for levels and other adjustments. It's not just the touchscreen. So while you can grab this and go ahead and use the touchscreen, you also get both coarse, just nice and quick coarse adjustments here on the selected channel, or you can press down for fine control and really get in there. It's one thing that's really tough with touch mixers is getting things exactly where you want them down to the decimal place, and without this kind of fine and coarse selectable control, it's just really tricky. Another nice feature on this console for something this small, it's pretty impressive that you've got mute groups. And you can set up mute groups very easily on this console and have things grouped together logically. That's a big help for both corporate shows and for bands. Having mute groups on a console this small may seem counterintuitive, especially having 8 mute groups for an 8-input console, but you can do different groups of things for different scenarios. So if you're in a small band and you want to set it up so that when you take a break, you mute all of the vocal mics except for maybe one mic for announcements and an iPod for break music, you can do that. You can also set another mute group up so that if somebody was going to play a solo song on guitar and vocal, their lead channel stay open while maybe the drum kit gets muted. Same thing for corporate work. If you want to have a quick mute group to mute things like lecterns when your video playback happens, or vice versa, mute groups are the way to go there. So having that on a console this small is really, really impressive. So definitely don't overlook those Just because it's a low input channel count doesn't mean you can't use all of these mute groups effectively to make your mixing a lot faster. The menu system on the TouchMix is fantastic. So in our main menu, you've got control over a whole bunch of different things, and I'll just touch on a couple that I think are absolutely brilliant. You've got a noise generator here, and you can... Let's go ahead and turn this down. We'll enable it, and you get nice pink noise there. So obviously we don't want that on our recording right now, but this is great for testing speakers when you first set up at a gig. First thing you generally want to do is run noise through the different components. If you've got aux 1, 2, 3, and 4 feeding 4 different monitor mixes or record feeds, and then you've got left, right feeding your main PA, you go through one at a time and output noise to each speaker and make sure that it's operating as you intend. Really awesome feature for a console this small. Another great feature here is the ability to do scenes. There's all sorts of factory defaults, and I don't think I would ever get into using any of those necessarily. You definitely could. There's a default. You can just restore the console back to the factory settings. There's all sorts of settings here for, different types of bands. I don't think most people will use many of those, but what you will use is being able to save your own settings. You can see here, this mixing board is on loan from Potomac Sound, and you can see some of the settings they've got in the console currently from the past week or so, and corporate jobs and different bands and things like that. So that's really handy when you go back to a job you've done before. You can recall that preset, and it might be something like a corporate job where you have a lectern and a number of wireless mics with certain outputs feeding record feeds and zones with things like that going on, and just brilliant that you can save scenes internally, and you can also save scenes onto your USB stick. So that's really handy. You can carry a default scene and upload it into multiple mixers. Very, very cool. This video is made possible in part by Potomac Sound, who keep a number of TouchMix consoles in their everyday arsenal and provided the one seen here. Potomac Sound has earned a reputation for excellence in providing audio and production services to the DC, Baltimore, and Mid-Atlantic region since 1996. You can find them on Facebook or on the web at potomacsound.com. We've looked at the DCA groups. I'm not going to get into security because that's best left for the manual, and you can see here I need to log in with a password. Another great feature that I think is just really handy for looking at things at a glance and knowing where you are on the console is this aux overview page. This allows you to look at every input channel and see what auxes it's assigned to. Instead of having to page from one channel to the next to figure out where it's routed, you can go to this aux overview channel and see exactly where things are for any input, which is very, very handy indeed. Same goes for the effects overview. You can see your 4 different effects processors over here, what you've currently got them set to. Here's a delay, a reverb, another reverb, and a pitch shifter, and you can see which channels are assigned to which in this matrix view. Very, very handy feature for quickly setting up things. If you wanted to, say, have your first 4 channels all go to the same reverb, you can then simply grab that. There's your delay. Reverb. Ooh, yeah. Wow. Hey, hey. Dense reverb. Hey, hey. Hey, yeah. Pitch shifter. So that's your effects overview. Very, very handy screen as well. Another crazy good feature for a console this small is there's user-defined keys. So you've got 4 different user-defined keys here, and you can set those to do a number of different things. So if you wanted those to be a record enable or a go-to, or you want to pull a specific menu up, or any number of different things. There's utility stuff, there's all sorts of different handy features that would normally be in a menu that you might want to have quickly accessible depending on what you're using that for. MIDI setup I'm not going to get into on this because I don't have any other MIDI devices that I could interface here, but needless to say, you can use MIDI to interface with this mixer, change levels, do anything MIDI would normally do. You can see here on the MIDI setup that, again, you can choose channels 1 through 8 of the MIDI input and assign that to do various functions. So if you simply want to have a trigger from a MIDI device to start a recording or mute inputs or whatever else, you could use something like QLab to output MIDI signal that would, you could do something like enable a mute group to mute the lectern automatically when you play a video from QLab. That would be really, really neat. And if you were doing an install or a job that was, multiple days and you really had a little bit of time to program some of this stuff and to set it up, you could make this mixer work very, very easily and very seamlessly with a program like QLab, firing off videos and audio cues and telling the mixer what to do next. We look at our phantom power. We have 8 channels here that can have individual phantom power assignments, and that's all handled on one screen. You can do that from the input channel as well, but this is a really nice way to look at what is and is not getting phantom and to make sure that your mixer is set up correctly before you plug in sensitive devices. And then in our actual mixer setup panel here, you get all the standard stuff that you normally would see in a digital mixer. So you can choose your Q mode between pre-fader and after fade listen. You can choose the sample rate from 44.1 up to 48. Dynamics processing, you can actually pick off pre-EQ or post-EQ for your dynamics. So that's really neat to be able to choose where the compressor and gate falls in the channel signal chain. That's something you don't normally see on a small mixer. Very neat. And then there's a demo mode, which we won't get into, and different options for network setup, saving system logs to a USB for diagnostics, brightness, and then clearing and resetting and upgrading the firmware. Very, very full-featured little mixer here. With the depth of features included in this mixer, I'm going to have to break up this walkthrough and review into 2 parts. Now that we've seen a basic overview of the features, in the next video, we'll dive into a closer look at how you actually interact with your audio. So be sure to subscribe and turn on the notifications so you don't miss part 2. If you like the videos on this channel, one of the best ways to support the channel without spending any extra money is to follow the affiliate links in the description below. You don't have to buy those products, but as you shop on those sites, it will help to support the channel a little bit, and it really does help. So thanks again for doing that. It makes a big difference.